John. He's in St. George, listening to KZNU. Hello, John.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Actually using a different name because sometimes these things, other people listen on the radio, and it's not exactly the funnest job I have as a utility billing supervisor, the one that makes the decisions whether or not somebody gets turned on or turned off if they don't pay. And I thought it would be good to throw a perspective in there. I work for municipal government, but I am a libertarian. I'm not necessarily one that believes in zero government, but I do believe in as much liberty as we can get now, and that's why I want to affect things. So ultimately, the position I wanted to share with you guys is in my city of about 25,000 residents here in Utah, we have anywhere from about 150 to 300 people that are disconnected for non-payment. And our government handles both water and power, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
both water and power.
Wow, that's unusual.
Yeah, you don't hear that every day.
Yeah. Half of our district, like half of our city, there's actual co-op-owned company where it's like a kind of credit union type scenario where all the members are like, co-operators of their utility. And so that makes it a little bit difficult because you have one company that's a privately held company. You have one that's a city-held company, but both reside in the same city. So we have a differential in price and things like that. But it does create an interesting dynamic because both in the private sector and in the public sector, we both have to disconnect for non-payment because this is an issue. Meaning some people out of 25,000 in our city have about 200 to 300 each month or 150 to 300 each month that don't pay. Okay?
Yep.
And so the idea is like, what do we do with these people? Generally, they get shut off after 60 days of non-payment. That means 2 months of use.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
That's about 1%, by the way, of the total population.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about a big deal now. Now, out of that proportion of people, okay, you have maybe 10% of them that have true, identifiable, real need. And what I mean by that is it's interesting, when you shut somebody up that really, really has need, they will come to you over and over and over and find a way, somehow, any way to get help. And we will verify it through charitable organizations, through leaders, through neighbors, et cetera, and we can really find help for them. But then there's
like the example. Hold on, just before you go on. An example of somebody who truly needs help would be someone who was just recently crippled. They lost their job. Some sort of dramatic thing has happened in their life that has depleted their resources, their bank account, and they really have nothing to go on. All their family's dead. They're homeless. That kind of thing, or they were homeless.
I would classify like that. Major illness, like complete financial ruin, like a house burned down, and they've been displaced, but yet they still need to pay the utility bill in this new apartment that they're in.
And the other 90%, so those were 10% you said of the folks that are in arrears.
Who are these people that don't need water?
The other 90% are basically losers, right? I mean, these are the people who are drug addicts.
Losers, not at all losers.
No?
They're average people like you and me, but the difference is maybe they manage their finances different and prioritize their expenses different in their life.
Well, they're prioritizing cigarettes and alcohol, right? I mean, come on. These are the people who they're poor for a reason.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about things like they'll prioritize maybe a cell phone, or maybe they're talking their transportation is more valuable than their water.
Well,
because ultimately, I would say almost every single one of them come in with a cell phone connection and with some type of phone. And that, to me, is a hard thing to watch because I think to myself, geez, water and power to me and my family are the most important thing. But to them, for whatever reason, they prioritize that because they still have a connection. And last time I checked, I mean, if you're 45 days late on your Verizon cell phone, I mean, you're going to be shut off for that too.
And
so my idea is like,
hold on, I'd like to dispute this for a second. So I had my water shut off, and it was I got a shut-off notice. Now, it didn't matter to me because I wasn't living in the house and hadn't lived in it for some time. It was up for sale, and I wasn't living in the state. I felt like I'm not paying a water bill for a place where I have the water actually shut off. Like I had gone to the place, turned it on, and like I was being charged by the county, I believe, for
there's a minimum, right?
Right. They're like for the possibility that I might choose to go and turn the handle and actually use water that I'm not using. So how many of those people are that?
Okay, so there's no one being disconnected for base charges only. There's no one in my city that's ever disconnected for that.
Okay.
They're only disconnected when there's actual usage or consumption considered.
Okay.
So that means current consumption. That doesn't mean like, okay, a month ago they had consumption, this month they don't have anything. Some cities and some, private industry, et cetera, they have different rules and laws and administrative regulation that allows them to lien property, to disconnect, to do interesting things, interesting tools, and make you pay for base charges even though you don't live there. In my city, I don't believe in that. We don't have those laws. Petition the council to make sure that we don't have that, and we don't. We don't do that. We're really just trying to collect for the portion that is actually being used. That's it.
So you were going to say before Mark jumped in there, you had an idea.
These people keep coming back each month, guys, is what I want to kind of get out there. I want to get this perspective that these same people on my list, I know them by name. I know who they are. They know who I am. We discuss. I mean, my disconnection day was today, guys. And out of the 139 people that we had on our power-only list, I'd say I know 75 to 80% of them. And I'm not kidding me when I say that. And they know me. And my issue is this is a great burden. It's a deal of resource and time and effort it takes to send my workers out there to disconnect, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I need to pay. They eventually come up with money. And I would say 90% of them, again, all of those people that I know, get their power on before the end of the day. But we have the same scenario, which it takes an interruption of service to get these guys to come in and
get
their
attention.
Yep, they deserve a service charge.
Basically, and we thought about better ways of doing it, like putting notices out, like text messaging. We allow them to, we're coming out with some new technology that can pay by phone. But anyway, I wanted to make sure that you guys knew that, like, we don't want to disconnect anybody. Honestly, I don't. And I don't think most municipalities want to do it. It's a great deal of burden and resource. And it sometimes it gets really heated. I mean, some people get really, really angry with you.
Bet.
But, I don't know, guys. It's a hard thing. I think it's a thing that's necessary, and I don't necessarily know, using force to do it, meaning saying, hey, we're going to shut off your lifeblood to your home if you don't pay. If I don't go to the gas station and I don't have money and I can't get gas inside my car either, and to me, that's almost equitable with my lifeblood, because that's the way I earn my living. That's how to get to work and things like that. So,
John, let me ask you this. So water's this kind of funny thing. Usually when you buy something, you get a bulk discount. Whereas what people sort of want, and from a macro planning side, is they want people who use less water to be charged less, per gallon, and people who use more water to be charged more, especially in places that are sort of droughty. But the system, the economic system, tends not to work that way. It tends to give bulk discounts for bulk users. But we hate bulk users of water.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? That's something that I've gone up against time and time again, petitioning my council to change, and that is, there's kind of this like, well, we believe in environmentalism, or we believe in conserving water, and we do live in a desert here by Las Vegas and southern Utah. It's very arid. We don't have limited resource. What are we going to do about this water? So therefore, every tier you use, the first 5,000 gallons, we're going to bill it really low at 90,000. That's about how much it takes to live on for a couple weeks. And then the next tier, we're going to do $1 per 5,000. The next tier, so it goes up and up and up until where you get to the point where it's at twice the price for the same 1,000 gallons of water as it is for the first 1,000 gallons of water.
Right.
By the time you max those tiers, so that's how governments have kind of come in and said, or regulatory bodies said, hey, we're going to conserve water, we're going to conserve power, we're going to do this, and the more you use, we're going to charge you more because you take more to the grid, you take more filters, you take more infrastructure, you take more service on your meters, you take more meters, all those things. And so that's why you see some of those funny business going on, but I don't necessarily believe in that.
John, it's nice to hear that your compassion is there for these folks who are having a tough time, and I appreciate the story and the expertise tonight. There's more coming up here on Free Talk Live. Yeah.
The one caller that called in from St. George, I live about 5 minutes away from there in a town called Washington, and it's also run by Washington City. I have to pay my utility bills, water, sewer, electricity, and trash to Washington City. And that's very common down here, and I think it's really strange. But there's also a private company here that would be about half the price for my electricity per kilowatt if I were able to go with them.
Why can't you?
You have to live in certain because they don't allow it.
Your neighborhood.
If you live in certain, well, not just my neighborhood. If you live in certain parts of Washington City, the only company you can go with is the Washington City utility company. It's the same in St. George and Ivins and Herrick and all the little towns.
Shauna, if you can hang on, I want to bring you back. We'll continue the discussion here in moments. You can also take control, just like Shauna, at 855-450-FREE. Free Talk Live. When we go back to Shauna, she is in Washington, Utah. Now, Shauna, you're saying Washington is a smaller city just outside of St. George, and that's where you live. But apparently the government is the provider of the water and the power there. You were saying and trash. You were saying that there's another company that provides power, I think it was, but you don't live in the area serviced by them. How is it that the town is divvied up? Does that company serve portions of Washington or none of Washington?
Well, it's actually the entire area is in Washington County, and certain areas in Washington County you can use this private company. But if you actually live in the main parts of one of the cities, then that city generally controls it. But the other company is about half the price per kilowatt for energy. So if I lived 6 blocks south of where I live now, then I could get power through this other company, which doesn't make any sense. As far as I understand it, it's all on the same grid. So I don't understand why we can't choose which company to go through.
Do the people just a question, the people who are 6 blocks south of you, could they, if they wanted to, for some crazy reason, choose to go with the higher-priced city organization, or do they have?
What? I'm not sure. I think over there that Washington City takes care of the water, sewer, and trash still, but they have to go. I'm not exactly sure how that works.
So what you're saying is 6 blocks south of where you are is the city border? Is that the idea? And then outside of the city in the county area?
Basically, yeah.
Wow, what a scam! Yeah, so basically, the Washington City has set up they've set up a monopoly provider. They charge whatever outrageous amount they want, and they make it so that competition can't come into the city to compete with them.
Yes, right, and that it's the same for St. George City, Ivins City, Hurricane City, and and some of them are St. George's seems to be the best at not shutting you off. They'll work with payment arrangements and things like that first. Washington City won't, but I've got 3 kids, so mine just doesn't get shut off. So, I just can't.
Think of the children.
Have my kids not have water. Huh? But exactly. I don't understand. I'm a single mom with 3 kids, and I have never once had my stuff shut off. We don't have cable and internet that month,
There you go.
But at the same point, it is ridiculous to me that in a lot of areas, and I've never seen an area like this. And, there's another city on the outskirts. I have a friend that has pit bulls in her backyard, and she's frequently behind on her bill. And I'm guessing that the city doesn't know her pit bulls are very friendly, but they won't go in her backyard to shut off her electricity. They shut it off at the pole at the end of the street, which shuts off her entire block.
Oh, wow. Shauna, thanks for calling tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you this evening. Thanks for sharing your experience. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. These monopolies are terrible. They're terrible because they're a monopoly. They don't have the incentive to compete. They may be run by your neighbors who may be caring individuals. In a town, a small town, everybody knows everybody, and I don't know what the population of Washington is there in Utah, but it doesn't sound like it's as large as St. George.
Well,
so it's probably
but monopolies have always provided poor customer service. They've always had higher prices. That's the nature of it. She's talking about a situation where, these power lines are crossed. Any company can provide, if you take a look into power, the company you're paying isn't the company that is providing you power. The power is just on the grid, and it's supplied by organizations that these companies that bill you sort of pay and that kind of thing. So it's a bunch of paper moving around. So is she basically her bill is through ordinances passed by the town, it is just like that's the only company that can provide her a bill. So it's not like the other company couldn't. It's just somebody wrote some dumb crap down on a piece of paper and said,
prohibited.
Okay, this is your area to fleece people, and this is your area to fleece people. And that's how it goes.
That is how it goes. And what would it take to change that? Well, I guess it would be some liberty-minded city councilors who would be able to get rid of the ordinances that prohibit the competition. Either that or it's done at a state level where, you'd have to have some sort of state law repealed, which, of course, Johnny Ray doesn't believe in. Johnny Ray is completely against using the system. But at the same time, you're going to have a tough time going in there and appropriating the water processing plant or the electricity facilities for yourself. I mean, there are people there, and they're occupying that territory.
If the existing infrastructure can be used efficiently, then that's fine, but it's not necessary. In any place, if the water authority were to collapse, the water can be trucked in, and if there's
That's
enough people there,
expensive.
well, I mean, people need water. People will pay for water. People will pay in order to avoid their own extinction. And so there's a tremendous opportunity for someone to build a business selling water to people. So
if they were given the opportunity,
all you need to do is tell these water bureaucrats to take a hike and get a real job and shut down the water system, and then just let the chips fall where they may.
That's a great idea, Johnny Ray, but I don't know how you can do it without. I don't know how you can do it without the political process. Unless the total failure of the government results in the water facilities being abandoned and then available for homesteading, I just don't see any other way besides changing the laws.
Well, I agree with Johnny Ray's point here that let the chips fall where they may is essentially the free market, and that has been successful in providing us with every other necessary thing that we have in our lives and luxury things that we have in our lives. So let the chips fall where they may, I think, is a system that will work over time. I think that there's going to be a bottleneck and there's going to be problems, but I don't think you can sell let the chips fall where they may.
Unfortunately, you got a point there.
You've got a nice little kind of, I'm taking a philosophically sound position here, and I'll run the vacuum cleaner over in the corner while you dum-dums try to figure out how to actually make this crap work. And that's kind of like how you're operating here. I can't disagree with you because I think that it would work at some point. Somebody's going to want water, and somebody will step up, and somebody will, step into the role of providing water.
By the way, there's a little bit of info here I pulled up. I presumed it was St. George was the town with 25,000. I was wrong about that. I apologize to those of you out there in St. George. St. George's population is around 75,000 in Utah. Washington City is around 21,000. So maybe Washington City was the city in question in the first place.
Gotcha.
Anyway, more coming up here. This is Free Talk Live. You can take control. We're talking about the water bills, specifically water service, lack of competition, the government monopoly, not just over water, but also over power. We've had some folks call in from St. George, Utah. We've got a live affiliate, KZNU, carrying the show. And that's a place where apparently the government in some places actually runs the power company, which is just hard to really imagine that. But that's the way it is. Most places that I've lived, all the places I've lived, it's been a government-approved monopoly. So the government doesn't run the company, but a company runs it, and they are granted no competition by virtue of some sort of a franchise agreement with the town. So it keeps out competitors.
And for whatever reason, the government oftentimes feels itself qualified to run the water, but does not find itself qualified to run the power, which I find to be very interesting.
What I'd like to know is, are there any areas? I know there are some places where you can actually get two power companies. Like I've heard there's a place in the Tampa region where that's possible. I've heard there are places where there are two cable companies available. It'd be very interesting to live in those places, to actually be subject to two competing organizations trying to best one another for customer service and price and things like that. Because just adding a second player to the marketplace puts the first guy in check. The fact that there's another option out there means that they can't get away with everything that they would like to get away with. They can't charge the prices they want to charge. They charge the prices they have to charge to be competitive with the other company. But I wonder, are there any areas of the country where water is actually provided not by a government, where water services to homes and businesses are actually provided by private companies.
Well, yeah,
there must be, right?
There was a Stossel report on a town that got rid of its water company. You don't remember this?
Was that Sandy Springs?
I don't remember the name of the town, but there was a town that Stossel reported on a town that John Stossel reported.
Oh yeah,
on
that's right. And they like cleaned up all the pipes or whatever.
It fixed all of their problems. But I don't know if that was perfect, because that was essentially privatization in the normal way, and meaning that we will take our water monopoly, we will sell that water monopoly to a company that can run more efficiently.
So a more efficient monopoly.
It's a more efficient monopoly, and
still not cool.
That doesn't make things good generally. I mean, what you need is that I understand that the city often has a water complex, and that water complex can be sold off in part or in whole. And generally, it would probably be sold off in whole. But and that's fine if people can compete. But I think it'll take a decade at least for somebody to sort of step in and really be able to compete.
Well, it's hard, right? Because, I mean, unless you're going to do what Johnny Ray was suggesting and truck in the water, then the only other option that I can immediately see would be some sort of crazy rain collection system, or to build new water lines.
Lots of farms do crazy rain collections, and that's a fine thing to do.
Sure, for a farm, but what about the average household?
Well, you've got a big surface area called a roof. It'd be surprising how much water falls on it. But don't forget drilling wells too. That's very doable.
Option. Good point.
And so, I mean, yes, you can compete, but it usually costs upfront money to do that.
Right. Let's go to Jim. He's in Lynchburg, Virginia. Jim, you're on Free Talk Live with Ian, Johnny, Ray, and Mark.
Hey, guys. There's no monopoly as bad as a government monopoly.
Oh, sure.
But, I mean, I don't understand your point. You really are compelled to have a monopoly for water service. I mean, I know you guys are extreme libertarian or anarchist or whatever, but, I mean, you can't have 7 companies building a pipe all across town and have 7 different.
It's not likely that you would unless there was enough of a demand.
I don't see why you couldn't have that.
You could in theory, but it would be very expensive, which is why most companies would be disincentivized from making that investment unless they thought they would be able to get enough business from the existing company to make it worth their while. It might be realistic to suggest that you could have 2 or 3, but again, that requires a lot of install. It requires a lot of upfront ability to install those pipes, and that's
also. This is
tricky.
Well, let's not forget that the pipes are already there in many cases.
Yeah, but you don't get to share the pipe with the other company.
Why not? They share the power lines. So the fact is, the city can sell off the pipes and then sell off the water treatment plant to a different company, and then a third company can come in, create another water treatment plant, and rent the pipes from the same company that has the pipes. This is all doable.
Right. I don't know.
And the fact is, consider, it's not my obligation from a moral standpoint to explain how a free market will work. I know a free market will work.
Well, I mean, I'm Mr. Free Market. I love you guys, and the free market is always the best solution. But what you're saying is just completely impractical. A water plant to serve a town of 25,000 people where I used to live cost $20 million, and that's before Obama came in and tripled the EPA rate. You can't have different or even 2 different water plants in a town that can completely serve the whole town and then have a McDonald's and Burger King approach. Certain things just have to be a franchise monopoly because of the intensive cost of the infrastructure.
I disagree. No monopoly. I have a water treatment plant at my house, and there's no EPA regulation for it. I get my water out of the ground. I have 3 different wells. I've got a filtration system. All that stuff's done, and no government bureaucrat has ever come in with their pencil, and if they did, I'd chase them off with my rake. I don't.
Okay. Now you're talking about independence, and I'm 100% with you, and that's great. I mean, if you're going to have a model of municipal water, if you're going to have a distributed plant and water that comes to your house without a well, that's just not doable in another way. But really, what I called about is I just thought that, you're kind of pushing competition too far. But what I called about is these crazy people in Detroit.
Well, now, wait a minute. Hold on.
Why?
No, maybe you're right. Wait, before you go on. Maybe you're right, Jim, that it's not possible. That in if there were a free market, and that you could, in theory, if you had the money, go into a market and install new piping and create a whole new option for people to get water. If that were possible, at least then we'd know for sure, right? Like right now, it's not even possible. You can't go into any town anywhere in the United States and set up a competing option because it's prohibited by law. The existing structure is that there's one provider, and that's the way it must be, and that's the way it will be. Now, if they were to eliminate those restrictions and let the marketplace operate, maybe you would be proven right. Maybe no one would be willing to come in and make that investment take that risk for the possibility of profit down the line. Maybe you're right about that, or maybe you're wrong, and maybe Mark's right, and 7 companies would sprout up to service different areas of the city or multiple areas of the city.
History shows competition works even when people don't believe it can.
Let's at least let it happen. Allow it the possibility. We don't have that right now. Anyway, go ahead with your comments on Detroit.
Well, let me go to another point. I would ask you to investigate, because Virginia went to a state.
State what? I'm sorry, you cut off there.
To, hey, you could have whatever of the different number of providers for electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for a while, and it failed, and that's all I know. And it might have been through regulations that it failed.
It probably did.
Every time I hear a story like that, I have to assume that what came from that was a crazy quilt, an unworkable bureaucratic nightmare.
I suspect you're right about that, because I know in New Hampshire there was some deregulation a couple years ago on, I forget, was it delivery or supply? Either way, there's like 2 sides of the bill for the power bill here from PSNH, the Power Supply of New Hampshire, that they've deregulated one side of the bill, meaning that I think it's the deliverers, anyway, or maybe it is the supplier. It's the supplier. So there's different suppliers now apparently that you can go with and actually cut your power bill, usually by like 10 to 15% every single month, and that seems to be going strong.
That's not somebody providing power. That's somebody who's billing you. No, it's not, Ian.
No?
I'm telling you it's not.
Okay.
I looked into this. This is just people who send out bills.
Really? Huh. Okay. Well, they're doing it for less.
It's the telephone company. You know as well as I do, Fairpoint's completely unqualified to deliver anything to people, including telephone. And now they're doing power? Where'd they get the infrastructure for that?
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.